Ever since June 30th, when Kevin Durant demanded a trade out of Brooklyn, the Nets have held the winning hand. They could always say, well, we just won't trade him. We'll bring him back, and you guys can all suck it. After today, August 8th, that is no longer true. The Phoenix Suns can breathe easier. It looks like the Nets are going to have to deal Kevin Durant. I'll tell you why, get you up to date, and we'll talk about if the Suns are still the front runners on today's episode of Locked On Suns.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 5 seasons, and a writer at Suns.com and Dime Magazine. A big thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen today and every day. Bonus episode today. We'll see how the rest of the week goes, but off of our normal August, Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule and figuring out what is going on here with the latest on Kevin Durant. So we'll dive right into it. A big thank you guys to making Locked On Suns your first listen. If you're finding us on your favorite podcast platform, hit follow or subscribe. Make sure we're in your feed every day. If you're finding us on YouTube, a big shout out to all of you. That's the best way to support this show. So hit subscribe down below and drop me a comment telling me, I don't know if I want to hear this. But if the Suns are actually still in the running on this thing, we'll get to that later on. I want to just get up to speed first and foremost here. Today's show, guys, brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered all season long with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. More from them later on in the show. But let's jump in. So last week, something I didn't talk about a ton because I was just waiting to see what came of it was Steve Bulpett, who reported for, I believe, the Boston Globe, I want to say, for a long, long time. He writes at heavy.com now, which is like a pop culture website, but he reported that the Nets, that Kevin Durant was going to be meeting with Joe Tsai. And then a lot of silence, didn't really know if it actually happened. None of the other big newsbreakers reported it. And then this week, today, first thing Monday morning, you get an update that the meeting did in fact happen in London, of all places. And here's what Shams Charania of The Athletic reported. Quote, in a face-to-face meeting with Brooklyn Nets owner Joe Tsai over the weekend, All-NBA star Kevin Durant reiterated his trade request and informed Tsai that he needs to choose between Durant or the pairing of general manager Sean Marks and coach Steve Nash. Sources with direct knowledge of the meeting tell The Athletic. Durant stated he does not have faith in the team's direction. And then later on, Shams continues, the Nets have direct knowledge of the reasons behind Durant's request, sources said, and understand that the 12-time All-Star will continue to be resolute in his stance. Durant is believed to want a change of scenery heading into his 16th season. Across the league, people have wondered whether Durant could miss training camp should no trade develop. Okay. So, where does that leave us? Well, I think it's worth pausing there because we did get a response from Joe Tsai, and I think it's important to go over that as well. But what did that particularly mean? So I think one part of this is that Shams has been reporting this from the agent side mostly, right? So all along, you've heard me be pretty skeptical whenever Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN reports something because it's pretty obvious that that's coming from the Nets. You've heard some silliness from Woj that would indicate that. You've had some leaks. Even if you look, I think a great example of this is the Celtics stuff that came out a bit ago where, was that last Monday? I don't even know. Where the Celtics, rumors about the Celtics trade came out, right? And you had it basically was a power play by the Nets. It was a leaking of negotiations, which is, it's obviously not a no-go in the NBA. It happens all the time, but it's a chess move, right? And it was the Nets leaking to Woj, hey, here is what we were offered. We said no. And that was kind of it. And then later on in that day, you get to Shams reporting more concrete specifics of the back and forth that happened rather than it was, sort of just, I think Woj's report was like, it was Jaylen Brown and Derek White and some picks. And then Shams had it a little bit more specific. He had the back and forth. And then he even had like a little bit more of like those talks have cooled. Marcus Smart, it's hesitancy on the Celtics part. So that's a perfect example of who is telling which side of the story here. And when you look at this piece, it was pretty easy to see who was leaking, right? KD's camp. Because this is not something the Nets would want to have out there. It was a power play by their player who, once again, not only reaffirmed he is nowhere near wanting to come back to Brooklyn, but making this ultimatum to the person who owns the team. I saw somebody tweet, there's only a few players in the entire NBA who could even try to have a conversation like this and be taken seriously. He sits down with the owner and says, here's the deal. I'm not coming back unless you fire everybody else, basically, right? So, understandably, the owner, Joe Tsai, responded. And so he takes to Twitter, and I'll throw the... that is not the right place. There's the tweet. It's a little blurry for the YouTube listeners, but it says, quote, our front office and coaching staff have my support. We will make decisions in the best interest of the Brooklyn Nets. So you can read that in a few ways. One, saying, I have full support in the front office and coaching staff, right? That means I'm not firing them, right? I mean, that's not too hard to read between the lines on. It's, I believe in Steve Nash, I believe in Sean Marks, and I'm not firing them. And then the second line of that is obviously, we will make decisions in the best interest of the Brooklyn Nets. So to me, it's again not a difficult one to parse. We will trade Kevin Durant, right? If that's the ultimatum, and I support the other guys, then the only thing left is to trade Kevin Durant, right? So I think that's where we come away from today. He's getting traded. Point blank, no questions asked. KD is not going to come back to Brooklyn. And you might have had a little bit of wonder even after that ultimatum of, would they fire? Obviously, that was the first question after Shams Charania's piece. But then beyond that, you could have wondered, would they just be fine stomaching all of this? Keep Sean Marks, keep Steve Nash, and just dare KD to sit out. That was obviously something we've talked about all summer since they haven't basically fulfilled his trade request, right? And I think what Joe Tsai's tweet did is it eliminated all of those questions, right? They're not going to fire they're not going to fire Sean Marks and Steve Nash, and they are going to trade Kevin Durant. So where does that leave the trade negotiations? I want to highlight one more part of the Shams Charania piece and get into the Suns side later on as well. First guy of today's show, brought to you by BetOnline. Football season right around the corner, guys, and BetOnline is your number one spot all year long, but especially during football season to get in on the action. More props, odds, and lines than anyone else. I'm going to click here into the football futures. NFL team wins is always an easy one. It can always be depressing as well to look at what the Arizona Cardinals are up against. Over-under is 8.5, which is basically just splitting the difference of a 500 season. That feels like a lot more respect than you hear when you hear them talked about. We also, I believe, have week 1 odds here as well. The Cardinals, I would imagine, are going to be underdogs against the... Oh, this has preseason odds. Preseason game number 1, the Cardinals are 1-point dogs to the Cincinnati Bengals. I'm not sure how much you would have to love BetOnline to bet NFL preseason games, but there they are. Head to BetOnline today or use their mobile app to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so let's get into more of the Shams Charania piece, guys. So lower in the story, you have this line. Couple things, actually, right? The Celtics, Toronto Raptors, and Miami Heat remain the most significant candidates to acquire Durant, sources said, with Boston's package centering around all-star forward Jaylen Brown seen as a viable deal. Okay. Viable deal. Tsai and the Nets have made clear privately that they will take every last asset from a team that trades for Durant, sources said. So let's stop there, because that's a lot. So, as a Suns fan, I'm sure you'll be ears will be perking at, I guess, maybe not perking, because I did not say the Suns in that list, and Shams did not have the Suns in that list, right? He's saying Boston, Toronto, and Miami are the most significant candidates to acquire Durant. So I'm curious, why are the Suns not there? So let's just hit that now, because I think it's the main question that will be on all of your minds. I think the Suns are still in it, but I do think that their status has taken a hit. And I think that James Jones, the pressure's on him. As much as we were all waiting for Kevin Durant to, fire his shot, if you will, right? Like, will Kevin Durant finally speak up, speak out, do something to move this forward? He did that, right? So that domino has fallen. As I said in that last segment, I don't really see a path forward where Kevin Durant remains a member of the Brooklyn Nets. So that's a big second domino to fall as a result of KD speaking out. That doesn't just mean he, vis-a-vis he's a son. Like, that's not what I meant to say. What is that phrase? It does not matter. He does not just become a son as a result of those two first dominoes, right? There needs to be a trade. There needs to be a major offer, right? And I think the pressure then, it falls onto James Jones. I don't see a way around that. Because as much as that step it creates relief on the part of the teams who want Durant, there's no more cuteness available, right? There's no more negotiating, because what you're getting now, if you're James Jones, if you're Masai Ujiri, if you are Brad Stevens, any of the executives negotiating with Joe Tsai and Sean Marks on this trade, these guys now also are operating with a level of he's available, right? Because I think that there's still the factor of if he wants to come to your team, but there was also this other factor of, like, is Brooklyn actually willing to get rid of him? Or are they just being difficult and ultimately not going to acquiesce, right? Like, I don't know if these trade offers were real, but when you started to hear about, they're demanding Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns from Minnesota, or they're demanding Anthony Davis and LeBron James from the Lakers, just dumb stuff, right? Things that were never going to happen. You start to wonder, are they actually negotiating in good faith? Well, now, with Tsai's tweet and everything else, it's clear they're going to trade him, right? And so the Suns being able to say, well, we're the only team who he really wants to be with. We're the only team really engaged in any real way. You kind of have to trade him to us. That's not really as legitimate anymore. And so I think that part of it is where the pressure ramps up. But then you get to this second line of that, this paragraph. Tsai and the Nets have made clear privately that they will take every last asset from a team that trades for Durant. So that's a little bit different, I think. That actually is a little bit of new information. It might sound like, it might sound obvious. It might sound like a foregone conclusion that, okay, yeah, the team trading a generational Hall of Famer is going to want everything from the opposing team. But I actually think it is a little bit of an update, because especially including Joe Tsai's name in there makes it significant to me. Because if you remember, and I've been trying to highlight this as much as I can because I don't think it's getting enough attention, There was reporting around the time of KD's initial trade demand. This came from Joe Varden of The Athletic. This came from Vincent Goodwill of Yahoo. Multiple people saying the same thing. I think Brian Windhorst has alluded to it on TV himself as well, where this idea started to form of like, Joe Tsai's just fed up with all of this, right? He just doesn't want to deal with it anymore. He doesn't want the headache, even if it ups the ceiling of this team. He's just tired of dealing with these guys. And he would be, I think the way that Joe Varden basically put it was he would be content to just get enough pieces to have a competitive team again. He doesn't need to dominate this trade. He doesn't need to, win the peeing contest. He doesn't need any of that. He's good to just get back to basically what they had under Kenny Atkinson with D'Angelo Russell and Spencer Dinwiddie and Karis LeVert and Jared Allen and all those guys. They were a, slightly over 500 team, but they were kind of these NBA darlings. Everybody loved them. You were getting the impression Joe Tsai wanted to get back to that. He wanted that sweet, affectionate, young little castaway roster that he could feel proud of and not have to deal with the Goliaths of the sport making a mockery of him, right? And I thought that made perfect sense, and that's part of why I kept repeating it is this owner is not trying to get the winning hand. He's not trying to just be the guy at the poker table that takes everybody's chips by the end of the night. He's fine to win a couple hands and walk away here. But it doesn't seem like that's the case anymore. And so I think that is why this is pretty significant in its own right. Tsai and the Nets have made clear privately that they will take every last asset from a team that trades for Durant. So where does that leave the Suns? They have pressure on them, but they can also, again, operate knowing that this trade is going to happen. So let's get into where they are here and what I could see happening next. First, today's show, guys, is also brought to you by Locked On NBA, the flagship national show here on the network. And I was on it on Monday. So if you're hearing this on Tuesday, go back and check that out. I was talking about the KD stuff a little bit. Some of these same ideas. You'll hear updates from everybody else around the NBA. You'll hear debate, rankings, all of it, updates on the news, everything you need every single week, every single day at Locked On NBA. All right, so I want to give some credit here to Mike Vigil. He hosts the Timeline podcast, and he kind of distilled my thoughts down pretty well. So I'll just read his tweet because it's a lot of how I feel right now too. Quote, I don't believe the ultimatum that's being reported is real. I think that's the ultimatum being fire Marks and Nash or keep me. I think that's some narrative spin so that when the Nets trade KD, they can say they got less than what people expected, but they didn't want to break up the front office and coaching staff, and they save face. So what I don't necessarily fully agree with on Mike's part is this idea that the ultimatum's not real, because I do think Shams got that news from Kevin Durant's side. And if Kevin Durant's the one who made that type of ultimatum, even if he didn't say it outright, if that was the vibe, the impression that he gave Joe Tsai, I think it could be realistic that he did give that ultimatum. But maybe this is something where Shams heard about the meeting, asked Kevin's side, then asked the Nets side, and then put it all together. That's what a super longer story would have done. But obviously this is about news breaking. And I tend to believe that if the ultimatum came down on the news, then that's probably what Kevin Durant actually did. But the part that I do agree with from that tweet by Mike is that this is spin so that the deal that actually gets done looks a little bit better, right? Because as that tweet from Joe Tsai indicates, our front office and coaching staff have my support. We'll make decisions in the best interest of the Brooklyn Nets. That's him saying, you will not hold us hostage. We will do the right thing by this franchise, by the people who will still be here when you're gone, etc. But it's also kind of a message to the fans of like, look at the position that KD put us in. We're desperate now to a degree, and we need to save the franchise, right? That's kind of the impression that Tsai is giving. And I think that's interesting because what that indicates is they might be sort of saving face a little bit, right? They might kind of be greasing the wheels a little bit on like, hey, we're going to have to take an offer. Might not be an offer that every fan is thrilled about. So I don't know. There's a lot of competing things here, as there have been the whole time, right? Because I do think, I believe what Shams reported, that the Nets are now projecting that they're going to take every last asset that they can. I believe that Joe Tsai is part of that. I believe that there's pressure on James Jones to make a competitive offer and stop playing with his food. But I also do think that there is some evidence here that the leaking going on might be to kind of smooth things over, right? If the trade is not amazing for the Nets. So where does that leave the Suns? Let's get to that more specifically now, because we've talked about the pressure, but what does that mean? So we've been talking about this for a while now, right? We know what the Suns' best offer is. Now that DeAndre Ayton's not on the table, it's not, some combination of Ayton, Bridges, and Johnson, etc. It's Bridges and Johnson. It has to be both. When you're when you're hearing legitimate reports that Jaylen Brown is somebody that's on the table, and, that even in this latest Shams report basically is indicating that that's seen as a viable path. It still seems to be a real possibility. These are things that would lead you to think, okay, the Suns, like I said on Locked On NBA today, like this, I just don't think that the Suns can beat it. I just don't think that the Suns are going to have the best offer overall, right? Like, the Suns deal is the one that Joe Tsai would have to do some damage control on, right? Like if you say you're trading Kevin Durant and all you're getting back is Mikal Bridges, I do think most Mets fans would be relatively disappointed. But that's where the rest of it comes in, right? So we know that part of it. We also know that to get to the best offer, the Suns are going to have to give all the picks up that they can, right? And so that's where we are. And I think James Jones just needs to do that. He needs to put that on the table. And then the next point is basically, are we going to see a third or fourth team get involved? And I think the answer is probably yes, although I'm not as convinced as some people that is like an absolute necessity, because I do think if the Celtics are balking at, they don't want to give up Smart, they only want to give up one first round pick, like I think Bridges, Johnson, some salary, and then all of the pick possibilities, which is 4 first rounders and 3 swaps. That version, I think, is at least close enough to the Brown, White, and 1 first offer that it wouldn't be crazy to take it if you're the Nets. I think it's worse. I want to just continue to repeat that, but I don't think it's crazy. And so that's what comes next. The Suns need to put that offer on the table, just get it over with. They need to put all of that pack. If they're already only getting close, but not actually being the best offer, then anything short of that offer by the Suns is not even getting them into the conversation, right? So they just need to do it. We're all going to be hurt if Mikal Bridges goes, but we all knew this is where it was headed, especially after DeAndre Ayton got traded. There is no other option. The third or fourth teams getting involved would mostly be just to get more. It's not about getting less, right? Like it's not, we can use some of what third team X gives up to lessen what we have to give up. If we can find a third team, we get to keep Mikal Bridges. No. It's not that, right? It's similar to what we've been hearing with the Knicks and Donovan Mitchell. It's all of your stuff and more, right? Like we want more. I've talked about this part of it too, where multiple teams' first round picks can be enticing because you're hedging your bets a little bit. If the Nets only get Phoenix first round picks, then if the Suns stay really good, that's not a very nice return. But if the Nets get Phoenix first round picks and then a third team's first round picks, even if it's just a couple, well, then you feel a little bit better because now you kind of have a few options, right? So that's one reason. Players The Suns don't have a lot of other young players. Maybe that you can get another one thrown in, etc. These are the types of things that will happen. Just to kind of explain myself a little bit too, because I don't think it's crazy for a Suns fan to read that line of the Celtics, Raptors, and Heat remain the most significant candidates to acquire Durant and feel pretty discouraged. I don't think you'd be wrong to feel that way. I want to end with this thought though, because all along, we've only heard one concrete rumor, right? Of an offer being made. Not rumor, report. Concrete report of what was offered, right? One time, Brown, White, and 1 first. That's the only offer, full offer, we've ever heard about. We've never really heard what the Suns were offering. We don't know what the Heat are even up to because they have a lot of complications around what they even have to give up and what they would want to and who can be on the same team as Ben Simmons, etc. And then the Celtics, we do know. The Raptors, it feels like the Raptors are kind of just this stalking horse, to be honest with you. I don't buy that they're even that involved because what we do know is they don't want to give up Scotty Barnes. And I don't really know if there's another offer from that team that's super thrilling. Like, I personally value Mikal Bridges more highly than I do OG Anunoby. I think Pascal Siakam is interesting, but I would rather have Jaylen Brown. And Pascal Siakam's close to 30. He's on the wrong side of 25 for sure, right? So I'm not sure if the Raptors are even out there. Maybe this does prove that the report from Shams today had a fair bit of Nets perspective. Maybe that was being put out there because those are the teams the Nets want to deal with. I don't think we should ever expect to see the Suns' names pop up in things like this, right? Because everybody knows the Suns have a level of involvement. They'd be stupid not to, and that's the team that he named. Of course the Suns are involved. I actually think, and I've said this multiple times, not hearing about the Suns for now is good news, because not hearing about the Suns means that offer is still out there. If the Suns had offered Bridges, Johnson, and all of the picks, and the Nets were not going to accept that, we would know it already, and the Suns would be out of the sweepstakes. Done. Right? Done. Because there's nothing past that. Obviously, there's third and fourth teams, but if the focal point of that type of package of Bridges, Johnson, and picks isn't appealing to the Nets, then we would just know it. To me, unless we are hearing concrete, I don't buy the lists of teams in the sweepstakes, because what reason do we have to believe that the Raptors are any more involved than the Suns, right? All we've heard about the Raptors is who they don't want to include and what they're not offering and whatever. Same with the Suns, right? They don't want to give up Bridges. They don't want to give up all of their picks. They can't give up Ayton. We've not heard anything, right? And then the Celtics, it's interesting too, because why did that deal not get done? Is it just because they were drawing a line at Marcus Smart and 1 first round pick, and that was so important to them? Or is it that maybe they put that out there, but they're second guessing it? Maybe that offer is not just like standing offer. You can take it at any time you want and we'll do it, right? Like, maybe that's been rescinded. I'm not saying Jaylen Brown's not available. I do think that that's still there. I think that's the asking price. I think that's the benchmark the Suns need to meet. But again, you just have to ask yourself, why has this not happened? Why are the teams that are being leaked? And who's being advantaged by that? The Suns do not leak anything. So you're not going to see a report from them trying to manipulate the situation much at all, right? You're not going to see mechanics of trade negotiations playing out publicly if you're the Suns, or if you're a Suns fan, right? You're not going to see their names get thrown around there. And if you're the Nets and you're leaking the teams, you're not going to put the Suns out there because that's the obvious one, right? You don't want to give Durant the feeling that his request is working. You don't want to give the Suns the feeling that they're in it. And you don't want to probably admit to your fans that that's an actual thing that you might have to accept until you actually have to accept it. I might be convincing myself of this. I might be going crazy. There are people in these YouTube comments every day telling me how dumb it is that I'm even buying the Suns part of all of this. I don't think it's a home run, a sure thing. I don't think Suns fans should be cocky, assuming we're just getting Kevin Durant here in town and it's done deal, it's over, he's coming, done. That would be silly. I do think the pressure is on James Jones, and if he makes that competitive offer of the whole rest of the Suns' asset trove that they have post DeAndre Ayton returning, they can get a seat at this table, they can be in these sweepstakes, and they can get Kevin Durant. It just needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. That's what today's series of events changed. I think we're going to start hearing a lot more of this in short order. I think these things are going to start to bubble up. You have the Lakers situation with LeBron continuing. You have now Kevin Durant putting a little bit of fuel to the fire. You have the owner getting involved. These are the types of emotions that start to happen when something gets close again. Training camp is less than 2 months away. So that's where we are. I will be right here with you if any more important stuff breaks. Otherwise, watch out, look out for the end of the week episode with Aaron Edwards closing out whatever comes along between now and then. But do not worry. Hit subscribe, hit follow on whatever podcast platform or YouTube that you're finding us on, because I will be here if there's anything to talk about. You can believe that for sure. Thanks for making Locked On Suns your first listen to catch up on the KD drama. Now go make Locked On NBA your second listen, where I'm sure they'll be talking about all of this and more as well. I'll talk to you guys later.